Hello and welcome to Chaplain's Word of the Day. I'm Chaplain Otis Corbett, and the words I want us to consider today are the words moan and groan from Romans chapter 8, verses 18 through 26. Let's look at those verses together. So let's look at Romans chapter 8, verses 18 through 26, where Paul says, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in order that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not the creation only, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we await for the adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. Now, one sign of getting older is when you have to grunt and groan to stand up. But in fact, our moans and groans can often speak better about what we feel than our words do. They can express our pain, disappointment, disbelief, misery, and dissatisfaction. In our text for today, Paul wrote about groaning from three different perspectives. He said that creation groans, believers groan, and the Holy Spirit groans. Let me explain. First, in our passage today, Paul tells us that creation groans. God created a perfect world in which all species were in balance. No killing was needed, and every creature was nurtured and walked without fear. Sadly, mankind's sin upset that finely tuned and exquisitely balanced world. Sin caused death to enter in to harvest skins to cover nakedness, and it caused death to feed us. Sin also resulted in the death of animals to protect us from wildlife that had gotten out of balance. It also caused imperfect, sinful humanity to have dominion over what was designed to be ruled by humans created in the image of God. So what does creation groan about? Verse 18 tells us suffering. Verse 20 tells us vanity. Man does some very silly things to nature. As an illustration of this, humans introduced the mongoose to Hawaii to kill rats. The problem is they don't hunt rats, and so they multiplied and became a pest themselves without reducing the number of rats. Verse 21 says that creation groans from bondage and decay. Verse 22 says it groans from pain. And we certainly see plenty of pain in the year 2020, but creatures have experienced pain since the fall of Adam and Eve. Now next, Paul tells us that believers groan. The ironic and counterintuitive fact is that revolutions don't begin when life situations are bad and getting worse. Revolutions actually get ignited when things are bad, but they're starting to get better. People get impatient and they can't wait. Now, this was first observed at the time of the French Revolution, but it has been documented on numerous times over the centuries. Believers groan because we've tasted the glories of God. We can't wait to feast in heaven. Like the free samples that bakers use to entice us to buy their products, we have been given the first fruits of the Spirit, but we must wait to enjoy the balance of our blessings. So what do we groan about? Well, we groan about imperfect families, spouses, and friends. We groan about imperfect schools or imperfect jobs. And we groan about an imperfect environment. Maybe we don't have enough rain, or maybe we have too much rain. Maybe it is too hot, or maybe it is too cold. We groan about imperfect churches. Now, I have been a member of a number of churches, and I have been pastor of 4 churches. None were perfect, but all were used of God in some way or another. So, what can we do in our situation? First, we can be patient, as Paul said in verse 25. Next, we can do what we can do. Like the serenity prayer says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I have found that it is easier to act myself into feeling better than it is to feel myself into acting better. Finally, as Paul tells us in verse 24, we should have hope in the Lord. Now, Paul also tells us that the Holy Spirit groans. Why can we have hope in the Lord? Because God knows what life is like. Jesus lived amongst us. As the saying goes, He walked a mile in our moccasins. And Jesus groaned just like we did. In the Garden of Gethsemane He groaned. On the Via Dolorosa He groaned. And on the cross He groaned. So why can we have hope in the Lord? Because the Holy Spirit intercedes for us also. When we don't know how to pray, He prays for us. When we don't know what we need, He prays for us. When we don't know why things happen, He prays for us. Why can we have hope in the Lord? Because we have expert help. When my wife was in school, she struggled in algebra. Fortunately for her, her brother-in-law had a Bachelor of Science in math, and so he could tutor her. But without his expert help, she would have failed. In the same way, we need to bring God into our lives to sort us out with His expert guidance. So in conclusion, are you tired of the year 2020? I am. Are you tired of moaning and groaning? I can relate. All of us need to seek God and His help, and He will help us if we ask. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with some more words we can consider together. I'm Chaplain Otis Corbett.